I wound up living on the sidewalk. I thought, what have I done to deserve all of this? I'm not a bad person. And so I wrote an angry letter to God. That's when I heard a voice in my mind. Your life is not about you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But when you embrace that awareness, then your life becomes about you for a very elegant reason. There's nobody else in the room. There's only one of us. Let your life be an experience of giving to others what you wish to receive, including unconditional love.
Welcome back to Mindset Positivo podcast. Today we are joined by Neale Donald Walsch. He's the best-selling author of the Conversations with God series, and his work has inspired and touched millions of people all over the world. Neale brings such a unique perspective on spirituality, purpose, how we can live more consciously, and what it really means to connect with something greater than ourselves. Now, before we jump in, I just want to say this. I know the word God can mean very different things to different people, so if the word doesn't sit well with you, I invite you to simply replace it with whatever feels right. Love, source, pure energy, universe, whatever resonates. Because I know for some people the word can be triggering, for others it can be deeply comforting, of course. And really, this conversation is an exploration for you to discover what your truth is, and I'm honored to share this journey with you. Neale, I'm so happy you are here. I know your work has had an incredible impact around the world, but I also know that there was a time when you hit rock bottom. You went through a divorce, you lost your job, you even found yourself homeless. And right now, there are so many people out there feeling despair. So I'd love if you could share a little bit about what that experience was like for you and how it actually led you into a deeper connection with God.
Well, you've described the experience pretty well, Pedro. I think the one thing you didn't mention is that all those things happened. Excuse me. The one thing you didn't mention is all those things happened in a 10-day period. It wasn't just that they happened in my life. They all happened in the same 10 days. I lost my relationship with my wife. It was very sad. But, we weren't angry with each other. We just kind of agreed in a gentle way that it wasn't working. So we decided to discontinue that relationship as a marriage. Well, I was, as I said, very sad. But 5 days later, I lost my job because the corporation I was working for needed to downsize. And I was the last person they hired, so I had no seniority. I was the most recent hire, and so they had to let me go first. So I lost my wife and I lost my job in the same 5 day period. And then 3 days later, I was driving to an interview for another job. I knew I was going to get the job because my old boss wrote me a wonderful letter of recommendation. He said the only reason we let this guy go was because he lacked seniority, but he did his job very well. So on the way to the interview to a new job, an older gentleman made a left turn in front of my car. But it wasn't in front of my car. He turned directly into the driver's side of my car. He misjudged the distance between our two cars. And we had a terrible, terrible accident. My car was demolished, totally wrecked, and I wound up with a broken neck. It was a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. Pedro, that's a break in your neck big enough to put a pencil through. It wasn't a hairline fracture. It was a huge break in my neck. And When I woke up at the hospital after the anesthesia, the doctor said to me, Neale, most people who have an experience like this die because that much of a break in your neck usually creates spinal cord complications, which could end your life. And those few who don't die usually wind up being paralyzed from the neck down. You have suffered neither consequence. You're a miracle. You're a miracle patient. And he looked at me and he said, what do you intend to do with the rest of your life? Because you've been given a great gift. You shouldn't even be here. So I thought, well, okay, fair enough. But I couldn't find a job because now they fitted me with what they called in the medical profession a Philadelphia collar. That's a plastic collar that you wear. And the doctor said, do not take this collar off for any reason because it's the only thing holding up your head right now until your, neck refuses. You must wear this collar. Well, no one would hire me. Finally, the seventh guy that interviewed me said, Mr. Walsch, we'd love to hire you, but we can't hire you when you're wearing that therapeutic device around your neck. It makes it very clear to us that you're not whole. And one wrong move while you're on the job, we're going to wind up paying your medical bills for the rest of your life. We can't afford to come to us when you're totally healed. We'd hire you in a minute. So I couldn't find a job anywhere. I did finally, after a while, get a job, but before I could, I lost my apartment. I was living in a little apartment, but I couldn't pay the rent anymore because I ran through all of my life savings, and I didn't want to move back in with my former wife. We were moving toward a divorce. So I wound up living on the sidewalk. And I thought, well, I can do this, for a couple of bad weeks, maybe a month or two. I can make this work. I'll find a job somewhere. A year later, I was still on the street, going from person to person with my hand out, asking for a few coins, whatever they could spare, and living on the sidewalk and sleeping on the ground. I had a tent. My former wife let me have the family tent, so at least I could sleep outside the rain, but it's still pretty cold in a tent. And I'm sleeping on the ground in the tent, and I did that for a year of my life. So that's when I finally got a little part-time job. I found a job as a fill-in person, a weekend job. They wouldn't hire me full-time, but they gave me a little Saturday and Sunday job to take the place of a guy who didn't want to work 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. So I got the job. I didn't earn very much. I'm only working 2 days a week, but I earned just enough to afford a little flat on top of somebody's garage. So I lived in that flat. I moved in. It was like heaven to me because it had a bathroom, shower. I could stay out of the rain. I could stay out of the cold. So I thought, well, this is like a mansion to me. But then I became angry with life. I thought, what have I done to deserve all of this? I'm not a bad person. And there was a yellow legal pad on my coffee table. I was writing notes to myself and making lists of things I wanted to do. And so I wrote an angry letter to God. I woke up one morning at 4:30 in the morning and I wrote an angry letter. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve all of this continuing struggle? And then I remember writing, tell me the rules. I'll play this game called life. Just tell me the rules. That's when I heard a voice in my mind. At first, I really thought there might be somebody in the room, and of course, there was nobody there. And I thought, great. Now, on top of everything else, I'm imagining that I'm hearing voices. But the voice in my head was very sweet and very gentle, and it said, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions, or are you just venting? I said, yeah, I'm venting. If you have answers, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are. And the voice said to me, okay, you are sure as hell about a lot of things. Would you rather be sure as heaven? And I said, okay, what's that supposed to mean? And the voice said, take down everything I'm telling you. I said, okay. So I began writing down the answers that I was given to the questions that I asked. And those answers brought up other questions, which brought up other answers, which brought up other questions, which led to other answers. And before I knew it, I was involved in a dialogue, kind of a conversation. And I thought, my gosh, I must be having a conversation with God. Because the answers I was being given were answers I had never imagined could be true. They contradicted everything I'd ever been taught about life, about, the higher power, about everything. So I did keep a record. I kept a record of all the answers. Pedro, I wasn't trying to write a book. I didn't sit down and say, but the voice said to me at one point in the first dialogue, Neale, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And I thought, now I got you. Now I got it figured out, because you know what? No one's going to publish a book because a guy says, God's talking to me. It's not going to happen. So I thought, if it did happen, it would be totally improbable. That would be proof to me that I'm really hearing from a higher source. Call it what you want to call it. Like you said, any name, Jehovah, Yahweh, God, the higher power, life, energy, whatever you want to call it. But at least I would know that I'm not imagining it, not making it all up in my mind. So I sent my handwritten notes to a publisher, small publishing house on the East Coast of the US. And Pedro, they called me back in 2 weeks and said, we want to publish your book. I said, you're kidding me. You're going to publish a book because a guy says he's talking to God? He said, yes, it's very interesting stuff. It's a great work of fiction. I said, wait a minute. You're not publishing it as a work of fiction. This is not fictional. And the publisher says, Mr. Walsch, are you trying to tell me that you think this actually happened to you? We thought it was a fictional story about a guy who has an argument with God. I said, no, excuse me. No, this actually is happening to me. So the guy says, well, okay, it's interesting material. We'll still put it out as a non-fiction book, but you're not going to find 500 readers, because people are not going to rush out to buy a book because a guy claims to be talking to God. It's not going to happen. But, we'll put it out. And he was right. He was absolutely right. The book did not find 500 readers. It found 5 million. Not bragging, just saying.
Beautiful.
That's what happened. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Beautiful. Did you ever have moments where you thought, wait, is this really real? Or did you always just trust that wisdom that come true?
At the very beginning, I did. At the very beginning, I thought, is this really real? How do I know this is? I even asked. I even wrote in the dialogue, how do I know this is not my imagination? And the answer I got was, Neale, where does any great idea come from? Where did Mozart's music come from? His imagination. Where did Michelangelo's art come from? His imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you think it's your imagination doesn't mean that it's invalid. I would stop it using anything, including your imagination. So imagine that you're talking to God, and what would God say to you? So I said, okay, fair enough. So I went ahead with the conversation.
Hearing you say that reminds me how universal this truth really is. And it makes me wonder, maybe everything about our intelligence, our ideas, and our creations is really about that greater intelligence, that the one that uses our minds as a channel to flow through us and express itself in the world. Maybe we are, in fact, the cosmos representing itself in every single moment. And I imagine that when you start to tap in this greater intelligence, it shifts not only how you see life itself, but also how you see every aspect of it. Grief, death, suffering, pain, illness, and sadness. And I know so many people are going through hard challenges that involve those aspects, and often those moments of despair can actually become the greatest breakthroughs, the moments that opens us to miracles and grace. And of course, and we need to be deeply compassionate with ourselves as we move through whatever human experience we are facing. But Neale, for someone who is afraid of dying or of losing someone they love, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, let me be clear that what you just said in the past 2 minutes is everything I was going to say. Clearly, you understand everything perfectly.
Sorry, I read the books. I read the books.
You can explain it all
I'm sorry.
perfectly, so nobody needs me. Goodbye for now.
Hello.
Okay, whatever.
Oh, thank God.
Well, you really do understand it perfectly, and everything you said, was so well put that I was very impressed. Nice going. Now, what I would say to a person
Thank you very much.
in the situation you've described is what my mother said to me when my mother was preparing to leave the planet. She was in the intensive care ward of the hospital, and we were allowed, my brothers and I and my father, we were allowed to visit her for 5 minutes at a time to say goodbye. And I went into the room to say goodbye to my mother. I knew it would be the last time I'd ever see her because the doctor said she had only a few days left. But what my mother said to me, I'll never forget. She said, "Sweetheart, don't cry. Promise me something." I said, "Okay, whatever. I'll promise you anything." What can I promise you? She said, "Dance on my grave. Celebrate. I know where I'm going." You know what, Pedro? I did. Several months later, I actually went to her grave. And I looked both ways to make sure that no one was watching, and because I knew they would think I was being totally sacrilegious. But I got up on her grave and I did a little soft shoe. I danced on her grave. "This is for you, Mom." Celebrating because I know where you are. So what I would say to a person who's facing the loss of a loved one, read the book Home with God. The subtitle is Home with God in a Life That Never Ends. And it's a dialogue with God, a conversation with God about life after death. And one of the biggest messages of that dialogue was, no one dies at a time or in a way that is not of their choosing. It may look that way to the outside world. It may even look that way to their own mind. But the soul is an individual expression of divinity, and nothing can happen to the soul that the soul does not embrace with love and agree to, including the soul decides when it's going to be born, where it's going to be born, who its parents are, what place in the universe it'll be born at, and when it's going to leave this physical realm and return to the realm of the spiritual. The soul makes all those decisions. So that's what I would say to a person who's facing the loss of a loved one. And I would invite them to read Home with God.
Home with God. I believe the same as you, and I think the opposite of death isn't life. The opposite of death is birth, because life itself never ends. It's infinite, eternal. So who really dies? Who do we believe ourselves to be? And what is death after all? And that touches something very profound, and I feel it leads us to another question. Some people still feel spirituality is too abstract or separate from everyday life. Some people even offer some resistance to what might be considered a fundamental quality of the human being, the spirituality. And humanity often feels so divided. Wars, politics, intolerance. From your perspective, why do this still happens? Because deep down, I believe most of us long for the same things: peace, harmony, sense of unity.
It happens in my observation, Pedro, because the largest number of people on the planet, most of humanity believes in separation. We believe that we are not just individuals. I mean, my fingers are individual, but we believe that we're also separate. See, my fingers are individual, but they're not separate from the body. They're simply individual expressions of the same body. But we think that people are separate, not just individual, but separated from each other. And we think that because we're separate from each other, we each must serve our own individual, separate agenda. And when my agenda is opposed or something other than your agenda, then I see us not only as separate, but I begin to see us as obstacles to each other's will and maybe even enemies. So what would change everything on the planet overnight is if we embraced the very first message in Conversations with God. In the first 5 pages of the first chapter of the first book, I'm told, yep, there it is, book 1. The first 5 pages, it says, Neale, we are all one. All things are one thing. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. If humanity were to actually adopt and embrace that truth, everything on earth would change for the better overnight. Overnight. But we've had violence and wars on this planet for all but 5% of recorded history. We suffer incredible economic distress. Many people go without food, or without sufficient food. And they're starving. People are starving right now in Gaza because there's a war going out.
Yes.
Now, I'm not making anybody right or wrong. I'm just noticing what's going on. And so this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. At some point, you would think that humanity would wake up and say, wait a minute. There must be something we don't fully understand here. about being alive, the understanding of which would change everything. But if you want to know what we don't understand, ask Pedro, because he explains it to you so perfectly, and nobody needs me anymore. Just listen to what he says, because he says the same thing that I was going to say. So I'm out of here. Goodbye for now.
And that's such an important point. Hey,
Whatever.
you're back.
I want to see if you have anything else to say that I have not already said or was going to say.
Maybe I can say that over my small journey, um,
How
I'm
old
trying
are you? What is your short journey? How old are you?
40.
Oh, you're only 40.
40 years old, yes.
Wow.
You think I'm well? I'm okay?
That's half my age.
Yes.
That's I'm twice as old as you are. I'm 82.
When I get your age, I won't have hair like you. Neil, I read your book your first book 9 years ago, and I never guessed I would be speaking to the man who wrote this book that gave me deep insights, believe me. It was a very special book, and it still is. And I have here the God talk, I have the conversations with God, but we'll get there in a moment. I was saying that over my small journey, I'm trying to know a little bit more and explore more about different religions and spiritual traditions around the world, from Christianity to Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism.
Buddhism is not a religion. Just so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Uh,
Islam is a religion.
okay.
Hinduism is a religion. Christianity is a
Yeah,
religion.
it's a spiritual tradition, maybe.
Buddhism is not a religion. It's simply a philosophy.
Yeah, Siddhartha Gautama expanded the principles of the Buddhism. Uh, anyway, I'm trying to figure it out where in the world, how do they pray, what is God for them, and even in indigenous traditions, maybe in some philosophies. And I've actually noticed some common threads. They all, in some way, speak the language of love, compassion, and connection to something greater. Yet, when
That's it. That's it right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
That's the
it's
common thread.
yeah, that's it. And actually, when these messages pass through human interpretations, rigid structures, dogmas, punitive systems often emerge, distorting what is originally an experience of love and transcendence. And it's kind of fascinating to see how the same spiritual principle can be lived as freedom or as obligation, depending on the cultural and historical lens through which is perceived. And what do you feel religions are getting wrong here, or what shift is most needed for them to truly serve humanity in the way they were intended? What do you think?
What I believe that religions are getting wrong. And wrong is kind of
A strong word, maybe.
yeah, I wouldn't say wrong, but they're inaccurate.
Mm.
They're mistaken. Where religions are mistaken, in my view, based on my conversations with God, is that many religions, most religions teach that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing. Most religions teach that God's relationship with humanity is transactional, that love is a transaction, like a trade deal between nations. You give me what I want, I'll give you what you want. If you don't give me what I want, I will not give you what you want. It's worse. Not only will I not give you what you want, I'll actually punish you for not giving me what I want. That's what religions, the largest number of religions in the world, teach. They teach of a God who demands obedience and who demands certain behaviors and who prohibits other behaviors. And if you don't obey, you're going to hell, or you're not going to heaven. You will not be allowed to return to paradise. And that's what I believe that religions have made a mistake about. And if we simply change all of that belief system, if we created a new theology, a new study of God, and if we brought forth a new theological revelation that says, no, guys, God doesn't punish us if we behave in certain ways, any more than you would punish a 2-year-old child for misbehaving at the dinner table. You don't say to the 2-year-old child, go to your room and stay there for the rest of your life. You don't punish a child with eternal punishment for acting like a 2-year-old at the dinner table, knocking over the glass of milk or whatever. I mean, you know what they say in America, there's no use crying over spilled milk.
We say it too
So,
here.
but you know, we think that God punishes us. We think that God's relationship with us is transactional. Give me what I want and I'll give you what you want. You don't give me what I want and I won't give you what you want. But what God said to me is, Neale, no. God's love is unconditional. The way you would love a 2-year-old child, for heaven's sake. If a 2-year-old child acts like a 2-year-old, what we say to the child is not, I forgive you, but it's okay. Here's a new way to behave. And we teach the child how to act more like a grown-up. But God sees us as 2-year-olds because we're acting like 2-year-olds on this particular planet. We're acting like 2-year-olds. So God doesn't punish us simply because we are unevolved, simply because we are spiritually and metaphysically immature. God simply teaches us there are new ways to behave. You could behave in a manner which demonstrates pure love. You know what? God said to me, that's a new way to define what God is. What is God? What is Allah? What is Brahman? What is Jehovah? What is Yahweh? What is the higher power? What is this essential essence that we're calling divine? It's pure love. Now, you know, when I say this in front of an audience, some guy in the back of the room inevitably gets up and says, oh, Mr. Walsch, come on. Are you telling me we've been listening to you for 20 minutes for you to tell us that God is love? Everybody knows that. Even religions teach us that God is love. And I have to say to my friend, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't say that. That's not what I said. I said God is pure love. Now my friend in the back of the room will say, okay, what's the difference? The difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. We can't even love the person on the pillow next to us that way. Much less can we imagine a God who loves us that way. But God loves us without condition, and therefore never punishes us because we're acting like 2-year-olds, but simply continues to show us the way, a new way to behave, a new way to be human. And other species in the universe, and of course there are many other species in the universe living on other planets, many other species have advanced in their evolution, and they're now what we would call highly evolved beings. And highly evolved beings don't behave the way we behave. They don't shoot each other or kill each other or murder each other.
True.
Or hurt each other emotionally and behave in a cruel way with each other, because they don't need anything from each other. They have come to the conclusion correctly that need does not exist. We all have everything we need to be truly happy. And you know what, my friend Pedro? That's what I learned when I spent a year on the street. After 7 months living on the sidewalk with nothing, I would wake up in the morning not knowing whether I would have anything to eat that day, depending on whether enough people put enough coins in my hand that maybe by 4 o'clock I could buy a bag of French fries somewhere, or even a hamburger. I didn't know how my day would be, but I did learn something at the end of 7 months. I learned how little I need to be perfectly happy. I don't need a big fancy car in the driveway. I don't need a big fancy house on the hill with 3 bedrooms and a rec room and a big screen television, a television set that's bigger than my wall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need, a computer to hold up, and be able to talk to somebody in some foreign country or around the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little I need to be truly happy. And the way to be the most happy is when I give away what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I don't want this to sound like I know it's going to sound, but please forgive me because I'm not boasting. I'm just trying to make an example. But there were a couple of days when I would actually do very well on the street, when I would actually receive, frankly, for me, in one day, a lot of money, $30 or $40 in coins. Maybe somebody would put a $20 bill in my hand or whatever. If somebody was particularly generous. You know what I learned? I went back to the homeless camp where I was living, and I gave away much of what I had received that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that by giving what it is I wanted to receive, I found a secret formula that what flows through you sticks to you.
Mm-hmm.
That what you give to others will come back to you. What we say in America, what goes around comes around. Or as a guy said a couple of thousand years ago, I thought he put it very well. He simply said, "Do unto others as you would have it done unto you."
Mm-hmm.
Because it is being done unto you for an elegant reason. There's only one of us in the room. We are all one.
There's so much wisdom there.
There's a book that I put all this in called The God Solution. And I make the God Solution available to anybody who asks for it. You just have to write me an email and I'll send you a digital file, a digital copy, the author's manuscript of that book, in which I describe that God is defined as pure love, and in which I have been allowed to explain how we can step into that same demonstration. If anybody wants a free copy of the God Solution, just drop me an email. My email address, you couldn't forget my email address if you tried. Neale@nealedonaldwalsch.com.
I will add all informations in the show box in the end, so people can contact you. And that's very, very powerful, what you have just shared with us. And your story is really fascinating, because going from one continuous challenge to another, and then waking to a real, clear communication with God. And I imagine there are people listening right now who want to develop that too, who want to be able to tune into the divine directly. What would you say to them?
I would say there's a very simple way to make that possible. There's no guarantee, of course, but in the book God Talk, I created a 6-step process that a person could engage if they really wanted to have their own conversations with God. I can't describe the whole process here in this podcast, but I can give you just a little example.
Please.
The first step is possibility. We have to agree that it's possible, that it's possible that a thing called God exists, and that it's possible for us to have a conversation with God. Step number 2, worthiness. We have to agree that we are worthy to have a conversation with God. God doesn't talk just to the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury or the chief ulama or the head rabbi. God talks to everybody, even Pedro, believe it or not. So if God can talk to Pedro, God can talk to anybody. So we have to agree that we're all worthy. Step number 3, willingness. We have to be willing to move against the cultural story, because the cultural story says, Neale, God doesn't talk to human beings. Come on. Grow up. So we have to be willing to stand up, even our religions tell us, by the way, many religions tell us that if we claim that God is talking directly to us, that we are a blasphemer, an apostate, a heretic. So we have to be willing to stand against the cultural bias. Step number 4, wakefulness. Stay awake, because you never know how God's going to be talking to you. It could be through a podcast run by a guy named Pedro, where you're hearing exactly what you needed to hear all these years. So stay awake. Step number 5, acceptance. Do not reject what you're hearing as just silliness. Accept the messages that you're receiving from the divine, whether they come in the form of feelings, in the form of thoughts, in the form of books that come your way, however they may be reaching you. And step number 6, rather. Step number 6, the final step, is discernment. To be able to discern or tell the difference between all of the information that's landing on us and being sent to us. Boy, more now, by the way, than ever before because of the internet. We're being bombarded with all sorts of information,
Millions
data,
of bits.
data every day. So is everything a conversation with God? No. If I'm going to my car in the parking lot and I reach into my pocket to pull out my car keys and some folding money happens to fall on the ground, it's a sign. God wants me to take all the folding money out of my pocket every day and throw it on the ground. No, it's just an accident. It's just something that happened. So to be able to discern the difference between stuff that happens and actual information from the divine. Now, what I want people to understand is that the divine, what I call God, does not exist way, way up there someplace. God exists way, way in here someplace. That the divine embeds itself in every sentient being in the cosmos. Each of us is an individuation of divinity. Now, I could be wrong about that, of course. And if I'm wrong, I guess I'm going to hell. But as George Bernard Shaw said, all the interesting people are there anyway.
And I think maybe lots of people may be wondering, how do I know if it's then real guidance or just my thoughts? How do I know if it is really God talking to me or within me?
The way I would know is that if it feels like freedom, joy, and love, that it's a message from the divine. Those are the three characteristics. Because I ask God the same question, of course.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know it's you? How do I know it's, And God said, messages from me will always carry three characteristics, three energetics, the energies of freedom, joy, and love. If you feel expanded, enlarged because of what you're receiving, go for it. It's probably a message from the part of you which is divine. It's probably a message to your mind from your soul, because your soul is the part of you which is divine. So your soul talks to your mind. Don't reject it. As I said a minute ago, accept it. And you will know that it's a message from your soul when you feel freedom, joy, and love.
So beautiful. And maybe over the years, when you've seen people waking up to their spiritual nature or to a deeper connection with the divine, how does that change their lives? What have you witnessed?
Well, it's different for everybody, of course. There's no one size fits all
Mhm.
answer to that question.
Mhm.
How it changed my life is that it gave me a whole new reason for being. What the French would say, raison d'être,
Mhm.
a whole new reason for being. And I really realized that Bill had something there when Bill said to the world, to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to rise up against a sea of troubles, and by opposing to end them. To die, to sleep, and by sleep to say that we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come. How it changed for me in my life is that I had a new idea of what dreams may come when we leave this particular physical body. And that gave me a new reason for being, a new reason for saying anything, for doing anything, for behaving the way I was behaving. It gave me a new idea of what love was really about. I was finally able to turn to the person on the pillow next to me and to say to that wonderful human being, I love you. No matter what. I don't love you because of what you can give to me. I love you because I see who you are. Whether you give me none of it, I see who you are. And I honor who you are. And I love who you are. Even when you're not at your best, I will never leave your side. You don't have to perform in a certain way to know that I am here. Always. Until death do us part.
Very beautiful. Neale, as we near the end of our conversation, I want to ask you a question that has been asked of you many times, even on a famous American morning TV show. Of course, you know what is the question I'm going to say. What is God's message to the world?
Your life is not about you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But when you embrace that awareness, then your life becomes about you for a very elegant reason. There's nobody else in the room. As I said earlier, there's only one of us. So, in fact, let your life be an experience of giving to others what you wish to receive, including unconditional love.
It has been such a gift. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. I know our listeners are going to take so much from this conversation. Thank you for touching all of our hearts today, for your service to yourself and to the greater good of all. Thank you for being a living testament that no matter the difficulties that life places in our path, even in the darkest moments, we can open the greatest treasures, the ones that lead to our most profound realizations and awakenings. And no matter where you are or what you are going through, it's available for everybody right here, right now. So if you've been inspired by this conversation or you're looking for a deeper guide on understanding how we can connect into the divine and recognize the voice of God, I highly recommend exploring Neale Donald Walsch's book, God Talk. And where else can we stay connected to you, Neale? You already said an email.
Or you can just send it to Neale at nealedonaldwalsh.com.
Okay, we will put the information in the show note below. Thank you again, Neale, and to everyone listening. I hope this conversation has inspired you as much as it inspired me. Don't forget to share this episode and join us next time on Mindset Positivo. Don't look now, but God is talking to you. In fact, God is never not talking with you. Neale Donald Walsch. Until then, thank you so much, Neale.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much. You're very special. Thank you.